All right. Hello, everybody. This is the weekly SIG Docs meeting, and today is the fourth week, or the free house phrase, fourth Tuesday after for the APAC friendly meeting, which is at 6 p.m. Pacific or 1 UTC. And it is September the 22nd. So before we get started, looks like all a bunch of familiar faces. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nobody new. Moving on to updates or reminders. This week's PR Wrangler is Vineeth, and I saw him active in the Slack channel, so things look good there. Haven't looked too closely at the docs themselves, so got to take a look there and see how things are going for sure. And next week's PR Wrangler is Peter Zhao. And I'm not sure if anyone's heard from Peter in a while. I personally have not. So I will take the action item and reach out to Peter. All right, and approvers, make sure you know your PR Wrangler shift and what's coming up. So moving on to the agenda, release 120. I saw that Anna posted in the SIG Docs channel that the shadow selection is complete. Anna's working on onboarding the team, or onboarding the shadows to the release team. And if there's any questions or concerns, to reach out there and contact Anna. There's also a release-docs channel. So for those who haven't seen, we ended up having kind of duplicate channels for the docs release process, as well as this release-docs channel. So we deprecated one of them or archived one of them, and now all the communication for the release process should go to that release-docs channel. Moving on, blog update. Caitlin, is that something you would be able to fill us in on?
Yeah, so really not anything that interesting going on there, which is kind of great. We're pretty much caught up on content, business as usual. We are going to open up blog shadowing again for anybody interested in potentially becoming a reviewer or approver there. So just something to keep on your radar.
Awesome. And I put in the notes there, if someone's interested to reach out to you or go to the blog channel, does it matter?
It doesn't matter. You can reach out to me directly, or else we have a SIG Docs blog channel as well.
Awesome. All right. So moving along to the co-chair transition. This issue has been opened up by Zach for a while and executing some of the action items that require someone to move to emeritus and a new chair to be moved into that co-chair position after shadowing for some time. So if you take a look at the issue, the one big outstanding item is a vote, and this is always somewhat of a uneventful process. We have all of the co-chairs here right now, Caitlin, myself, and Zach, and it's the magical hand wavy, do we vote all in favor to have Irva become a co-chair? So I guess we'll vote with thumbs up or thumbs down from the chair's perspective. And there you have it. There's the magical transition there. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Thanks. It's been good. I'll still be around. As far as actually finishing the transition process, I looked for every place with a file that needs an update, like an owner's or an owner's alias, or in the case of community, like some of the YAML manifests. I got about halfway through that list, and then I realized that it's a lot easier if someone else opens them up, and then I can approve myself out. So I think like let's see, the KK owners aliases, KTest infra, KORG, and then we'll need to open a couple of PRs in Kubernetes SIGs organization in the reference docs repo, and then in the Kubernetes case.io repo. If that might be a good action for IRV to open PRs against, and I'm happy to approve them. Whoever does it, I'm happy to approve the PRs that finalize that change.
Awesome. So those still need to be done. And is that tracked in the issue as well?
Yeah, it's tracked in the issue description.
Okay, perfect. Taking a note here. And would you say that that process makes more sense from the PRs that you already opened up in the future? Should we make that just a standard that the person who's going to emeritus or transitioning out doesn't open their own PRs to make it easier to transition? Or
it's probably, yeah, it's probably easier. If like transitioning someone out, it's a lot easier to approve a PR than it is to open all of those PRs. And in the case of like somebody who's not able to open PRs for whatever reason, it's a lot easier for like the incoming chair to open those PRs and for another chair to approve them.
cool, I'll make a note there. Definitely. Thank you. All right, so moving on to issues and PRs, and I took a look at this. I took a look at this issue, and I did follow it at one point, and I feel like I've somehow lost kind of my detachment to this conversation or context. I'm not sure if anyone on this call has more context. Zach?
Yeah, so there's a PR open. What is it? It is 23497. And this is a new contributor who's opened this PR. It is, it's currently stuck in review. Let's see.
What was the PR number again?
23497. I'm happy to put a link in chat. There it is. So Tim, the points that Tim is raising are valid. On the latest review, it looks like Tim reviewed about 8 hours ago. I guess the question that I have is whether we can approve this PR as is and then iterate, or whether we need to address all of this feedback. Tim does raise some valid points, but this, to be honest, this isn't the best new contributor experience for this person. So I wonder if we might get more done by approving this PR and then addressing the valid concerns that Tim raises in a follow-up PR.
Yeah, personally, I would be completely fine with that. But what does the community, or I guess the majority of folks here, think? Got thumbs up, thumbs down? Anyone feel like we shouldn't move this and iterate on top of it?
I think we have to at this point. It's getting super, super bogged down in like details. And like it doesn't seem like the principle of the change this person is trying to propose is under debate at this point. And we're kind of just tearing ourselves apart over like tiny little loose threads.
Some of this is issue conversation. Like some of the conversation at this point like should have happened in the issue rather than in the PR.
Yeah, and like this is like a classic style guide type situation in that it's style guides are opinions. They're opinions. They're just a thing we all agree to, and we're trying to agree without like speaking to each other face to face or being in a synchronous space and time. Which means that people will just forever keep stamping their opinion on the internet, um, and daring people to disagree. So I think we kind of just have to do our best to push it along, or else it's never going to get there.
Awesome. So that brings up another interesting point is I know that the PR author owner did squash their commits at one point, I believe, but now it still looks like we're at 6 commits here. The question I would ask here is when we do merge this PR in, does it make sense just for us to apply the squash label, get this in, iterate on top for the sake of moving quick, or open that up? And personally, I lean more towards the label, kind of the quick and like, let's just more focused on PR velocity than slowing folks down for, the sake of learning. But I think there's value in both. I'm curious if anyone has any hard feelings one way or the other.
Looking at the commits, I don't see any history revisions in the commits, and that's the only thing that would concern me. So I think the label approach and favoring velocity is totally valid.
Can I ask a question, which is why do we encourage people to squash themselves as opposed to flat out just applying the label? And the reason I ask this is for a new contributor, wouldn't it be easier for them if we just applied the label as opposed to like, and now you have to learn this kind of sketchy Git thing. Have fun.
The exact conversation came up in SIG Contribex, and the general consensus was it's a good skill to learn for sure. And if there's time and ability, that the recommendation was that the PR author actually performs the squash. But if I'm PR wrangling and there's a PR that's open with not a ton of movement or action, it has 2 commits on it, I'm going to apply the label and move forward for the sake of getting that to merge. And Zach, you had your hand raised. Sorry to speak over you there.
No, it's all good. Clean commits are a best practice. Having one clean commit that makes all the changes obvious and builds cleanly, as opposed to having to parse individual commits ultimately. Like working in individual commits can be really helpful during like a protracted review, but squashing for a final review is a best practice.
I understood that. I just didn't understand why we don't use the label more as opposed to, for example, asking the author. Because again, for a super new contributor, it almost doesn't make sense to saddle them with like the Git if it's their very first time. Or if like, for example, you sit there kind of waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks for somebody to squash their commits. Why aren't we more trigger happy with the label? I guess is my question, but I think Jim answered it.
Cool. Yeah, and I don't think we have a hard policy that I don't think one way or the other. I think we have that rule of thumb from the conversation in SIG Contribex, but if we wanted to make it more widely known or more of a norm, definitely I think that would be something someone could potentially own or promote there. But yeah, to me, it's a complete judgment call. I want to give folks the opportunity to learn and, learn some of the pains of squashing a commit, but at the same time, I don't want to slow down productivity, PR velocity, things of those nature. Cool. So I made a note there. If somebody wants to jump into that PR and kind of summarize their comments, apply the labels and merge it, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I can tackle that after this call. Moving on to Tim put on the action item here that the Zoom passcode update is missing from the docs meeting links. So for context and those who are not aware, Zoom is going to change where it enforces a password, which is going to be 5, the number 5 sevens. So it's just 7 5 times. And so what we need to do is update the meetings and update the meeting invites with the new links with the password, as well as update the community guide and And just generally announce this change and make sure it's known, and folks update any of their links or resources there. So I'll take care of this. I didn't want to change it prior to this meeting, given that there would be any issues. And given the way I kind of flew into this meeting like Kramer and Seinfeld, I feel like I'm glad I didn't actually make that change prior to this meeting. But just be aware, most likely next Tuesday's meeting will have the password in it. I'll go through and PR those changes and update this issue as well. Cool. Moving on to Celeste, it looks like you had a action item here, a topic to talk about the contributors. You want to take that away?
Yeah, so the issue here is now Kubernetes.dev exists and how we wanted to link that from the main site. And where that discussion led last time was, do we need to say goodbye to our current community page? In terms of content that is directly living on kubernetes.com/community at this point, the code of conduct would need to move and find a new home, and arguably it maybe shouldn't be under community anyways. It should be a little bit more high profile. And I think Tim had a concern about meetups in the normal times. I think there's a feed of meetups on that page that would need to find a different home. But aside from that, nobody in the community had any attachment to it. And it's the perspective of SIG Contribex and Bob Killen that that community page should just go away, and we should be linking to kubernetes.dev from this point onwards. So we looked at the commit history for that page, and the only people who have committed to it in the last little while are CNCF employees. So I looped back around with Chris A., who's the CTO and my boss, and said, is there any problem if we make this page disappear into the ether? And he said, I defer to SIG Docs. So it's on us. My feeling is that we should be linking off to kubernetes.dev at this point. And finding new homes for the things that we raised as issues. Ray.
Hello. So I met with Anna today. I'm one of the doc shadows, and there is an instruction in the community page that is not in the handbook now for making placeholder PRs, and it just is something simple. So something that we I need to make sure that's in the kubernetes.dev or in the role book for the docs team. I think it's in that community page. I'll have to go verify, but that's the only thing that I see.
It's on kubernetes.io/community or kubernetes.dev.
I don't remember, but I don't think it was on .dev, but I'll have to see and make sure to get it out, or make sure we have it in our handbook before we
take a look and let me know, like DM me, because I side-eye that very strongly because the current kubernetes.io/community is very much a marketing landing page.
Gotcha. Okay. It's probably not there. I just need to make sure. I just need to make sure.
But thank you for raising that.
I don't really have any strong opinions on that. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense, and it is in alignment with the removing third-party content. Like, why duplicate the data if we don't have to, and we can link outside to that page?
Yeah. And my understanding of what they're planning for kubernetes.dev is, like, right now it's a bit of a skeleton, but it is supposed to be the home for all things community going forward. We'll see how that goes. But I think top nav real estate wise and deduplication wise and ownership wise, it's probably the best move.
So will meetups go to kubernetes.dev, or do we need to find a home for that?
We might need to find a home for that. I have not fully scoped this out. But I
Okay.
believe there's an issue floating around the backlog, which I will post the results of this discussion to, and I'll link it in SIG Docs so we can talk a bit more.
Okay, and you said SIG Contribex was on board with getting rid of it?
That's Bob Killen's opinion.
Okay.
Launch that thing, so.
Yeah, I'd love to take a look at the issue and just kind of take it. It was just a really big project we did with Contribex a while back, so I kind of hate to get rid of it.
Okay, fair.
But if the plan is to duplicate all the content, then and they're on board, then I think I'm fine with it.
One request about the meetup content. So I have a Google Season of Docs intern working on that. It's Rin Oliver. So assigning Rin that issue, if you, Celeste, if you specifically want to open an issue to make sure that the meetup content lives prominently on kubernetes.dev, and that the community code of conduct is likewise high profile and visible. That sounds like an excellent thing for Rin to be aware of and to incorporate into their work.
I agree. I think I actually have no problems with the community code of conduct living on kubernetes.dev personally. I think the other people to inform of that are maybe probably the code of conduct committee and say, like, this might be happening. Are you okay? So I will do that through the ways in which I do that. I think assigning Rin is also a good idea as well. So I'm totally cool with that. So yeah, how about I take those as action items? List to update the issue that I linked in the thing. And I'll create some work for Rin and assign them. Should I create it in SIG Contribex?
It's a good question. I'm agnostic to where it lives as an issue, either website or community.
Okay, I'll find a home for it, and I'll open up a issue for Rin, and we'll get this show on the road.
Cool. Sounds good. So it sounds like there's direction on there. Is there anything else related to that page? You're all good? Cool. So moving on to the Korean localization update. Shioko, do you want to take that one away?
Sure. Hello, I'm Soko, and I'm leading Korean localization team. I hope to share the Korean localization work. First, we have new reviewer for Korean content, Jaehwa. He's a very nice, passionate contributor, and we are very welcome for being a reviewer. Also, I want to share the team milestones. We have finished Korean localization for release 1.18, and thank you. The dev 1.18 KO11 was the last branch, and there was the special branch to update outdated content for Korean. And it has been merged to release 1.18 branch. So we finished it. And also we are working on 1.19 master. So currently, current working branch is dev 1.19 KO2. And it will be merged soon, maybe tomorrow, and we will create KO3. Again, we hope to share, we are looking for a method to notify team milestone schedule to GitHub only contributors. We think we need this kind of notification way because some contributors does not participate in Slack channel and Korean team meeting. They only check the GitHub status. So since we keep changing working branch, so we try to find out what is best way to notify team schedule. And currently we are testing GitHub milestone, and we have opened an issue to share team branch schedule. So you can check the links. First one is issue to contributors, to help contributors understand what is the PR freeze and merge target date. So currently we are testing, and we put this issue to a milestone level 119 KO2 currently, and when we make 119 KO3 branch, we will make another milestone for KO3, and we will open help wanted issue for KO3 again. So currently we are testing, and maybe Korean localization team member will also give some ideas and regarding this testing. So if it is settled, then I think we need some authorization for milestone team. Yeah, that's all.
Awesome, thank you. And so you still need help with the GitHub milestone and the permissions there, or are you testing out the process right now?
Yeah, we are currently testing, so we are not sure we will use milestone, keep using milestone. We are not sure, but if we think it is right way, and maybe it is right way to the localization subgroup, then we will request permission to use the milestone maintainers pro command.
I'm fascinated to hear how your experiment goes. It's a very clever use of the milestones. So yeah, please keep us updated. I'm really interested to hear what you decide.
Yes, thank you. We will update. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And I don't know if you have already notified, or it might be too early yet, there is the new SIG Docs localization subgroup. Might be worth bringing up there for just general awareness, synchronization. I don't know. Maybe other people have the same problem, you know?
Yes, I know. Maybe tomorrow there will be Korean localization team meeting, and I will share there is new localization subgroup, and I'm not sure I should participate, but I will ask it to our team whether we should participate or not. And anyway, we will inform how we work to localization subgroup. Thank you.
Awesome, yeah, thank you. That would be very helpful. So moving on here to, looks like Zach added a line item about community norms for approving your PRs. Do you want to take that away, Zach?
Yeah, so Tim raised the issue, I guess, in last week's weekly meeting. There was a PR open. Well, I'm not familiar with the immediate details, but I gather that essentially he approved his own PR. He got feedback and input from the community before he did it, which is great, but ultimately approved his own PR.
Yeah, and just to put this out there,
Yeah.
he asked at the last meeting. I personally said yes. I'm going on the record saying that. I encouraged him.
Okay. Basically, I think we shouldn't do that. The Prow behaves differently in different repositories. Like some repos that you go to, if you are an approver in that repository, Prow, when you open a pull request, if you're an approver, Prow automatically applies the approved label. It assumes that because you're an approver, you know what you're doing, and smooths the path to approval, so that any other contributor or any other member of the org could just put an LGTM on it and it merges. Because pull requests to K website are high impact and high visibility, I think having an explicit review separate from an LGTM and that, two things. I think that having an explicit review for approval is a good thing. And speaking as, I can't believe I'm going to say this, as a chair emeritus, I know that every single chair has committed some horrible thing to the website at some point that we have had to frantically revert. So none of us are too good that we can just self-approve at random. So I guess I want to recommend that we be very explicit that we don't approve our own PRs, even for easy stuff, because it sets the standard by which others observe our behavior and it becomes a community norm.
I think that's fair. So I'm remembering the context of this a little bit more as you were speaking. And what it is that PR was a website change. And it was like a fairly technical website change. So Tim, in his infinite brilliance and kindness, decided to parameterize the way that we pull in the CNCF landscapes, which is a very, very smart thing to do.
It's brilliant. It's beautiful.
My own. And I think it actually, there's an underlying issue here, which is there isn't enough people to approve those kinds of PRs who feel comfortable approving web development type PRs. We don't have enough active approvers with that skill set and that knowledge. And we kind of need to start pulling people in who have that, because we're doing a lot more of that. And I was Wrangler that week, and I put the looks good to me on that. And I put the looks good to me on quite a few PRs that week, which were effectively web development and web improvement PRs. But I can't do both. They're too big for that. And it's like, aside, if Tim's opening it, Tim's typically the other person who will put the approve on it, because he and I are the most active approvers for these kinds of PRs. So there's a problem here. I don't have a solution. There's a problem.
So, I mean, that's a really valid concern to raise, is if approval just amounts to a blind rubber stamp, then that's not good. And that sounds like something that we need to recruit for. But let's not let that lead to a broken approval process. Let's solve the actual problem as opposed to letting it roll downhill into a process problem, if that makes sense.
So I have actually, oh, hello, by the way. I have actually,
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's bunch of pull requests that I created. So basically I've done this many times, but every time I do it, I always ask at least more than 2 other reviewers give LGTM. So that, like, you know, because Japanese translation has only 2 reviewers, I don't know, owners, me and the other. So we don't have like much time to give the approval label. So it's kind of our rule, but I always ask at least more than 2 reviewers says LGTM, then okay, then I just merge it. That's how we do, if that makes sense.
You are brave to admit that. I don't know. I definitely have a way that I would prefer to do it, but I'm not a chair anymore. So Jim and Caitlin, this is ultimately up to you.
Nice. I think localization has problems with the number of people who have the ability to approve and review. And I think that this also stems down to the question that's brought up at the last APAC meeting, or maybe it was a couple APAC meetings ago, is what does that ladder look like for getting more reviewers and for getting more approvers? Personally speaking, I think if you have 2 approvers, you might have enough ability to say, delegate to the other approver. But at the same time, for the sake of PR velocity, it sounds like we have a people problem more so than an approval problem, and getting those people in positions to be able to approve. So I'm not, I don't know if I feel as strongly as Zach does about this, especially if you were to bring it into the context of localization. But I do think there's ways to have other approvers write the approval there. And in the context of like what Celeste and Zach were both referring to, where the approve is just a simple rubber stamp, I almost, I'm pretty much torn there. I feel like there could be potentially extra effort to say, can someone else take a look at this? We need this specific expertise in the SIG Docs maintainers channel. But, it's very possible that there are only 2 subject matter experts. Once again, a people and process problem. Yeah, I don't have enough context now. I'm just kind of rambling here out loud. I don't know. Zach?
So I think specifically with the PR that Tim opened that parameterized the CNCF landscape, that's the sort of thing I know that Bob Killen would be fascinated by and would love to review. And I'm guessing that Bob isn't the only one. Ben Elder would be another person. So maybe we need to reach outside of ourselves, and even if they're not approvers for the repository, they can at least give like enough of a review as a subject matter expert to have like a weighty LGTM, I guess, is a way to think about it.
I don't know if this is I don't know if we're gonna find a solution to this in one meeting, which I know is like a nah, but this is a bit too thorny a problem.
Does
I'm sorry for raising it.
does anyone have a link to the PR that Tim submitted?
Can
It'll
find
be
it
last
in
week's
the
meeting notes.
SIG Docs maintainers channel. Yes, 23210. Let me paste that in chat.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of speak to how we've done these in the past for like the web changes, it's, pretty much all approvers, in my opinion, should understand how to review for any breaking website changes. And as long as, we can confirm there's no breaking website changes, we've merged things like this.
But so this kind of comes back to if you're making kind of an in-depth web change, you need to understand what can possibly break. Like you have to be able to grok the PR enough to say, like, I understand what the change is. For example, I understand that Tim is effectively using data parameters, passing them into the CNCF thing, and therefore it can render things correctly. It still comes down to an expertise problem for this particular type of PR. it's less of an issue, for example, for translations. But you need to be able to know what a breaking change constitutes in this context.
Part of the difficulty is that like the website may not break instantaneously because of that change. It may be like a rolling change that cascades downhill. We've seen a couple of those like in the past year where only weeks later did it become evident that the impact of a visible change was due to a change made like 2 or even 3 weeks earlier. I mean, yeah, this may not be a one meeting solution, but yeah, I'm sort of rambling at this point too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. We can't solve this. Now, my reservation or concern would be that I don't know what it would take to solve this. You could have a room full of 100 folks and we still have the same issue and we can have the same discussions about this. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm guessing that we're probably not the only community that has faced a problem like this. So maybe just being visible about it, bringing it to the next community meeting and saying, hey, this is what we're facing. Has anyone else faced this?
Yeah. Taking it to the SIG Contribex monthly update might actually be a good idea. And just seeing what comes.
Talking about
yeah. This is Jimmy. I have more so related question about reviews and the pro behaviors. So if you look at the owner alias file, you will see that the Chinese localization team is pretty big. We have 13 owners, which is as big as the English team and the French team. But actually, we have only half of the team actively contributing or reviewing. When a PR comes in, that PR will be assigned randomly inside the team. But sometimes it makes me awkward. The PR is assigned to someone else, but that one never comes up, never shows up. So if I'm reviewing the PR, it looks not so good and not respecting people. If I'm not reviewing it, that PR just hangs there. I cannot contact the people. So maybe I can try comment some names out of the team. I'm not deleting them, but they are active again. When they have cycles to contribute again, we can add them back. But I don't know the criteria for doing that. For how long, if a member is not so active, can we cross their names out? Is there any such guidance? It's a tough question.
If I recall correctly, there is specific guidance in the community page, maybe for like the duties for reviewers and approvers. There is a stated expectation that reviewers remain active. And if I recall correctly, they do state a specific window for activity. And I recall it being pretty short, maybe as short as 30 days, but possibly as long as 90 days. But I don't think it's longer than 90 days. So if you wanted to be very conservative and very generous in the amount of time that a reviewer wasn't active before you commented them out, 90 days seems like a reasonable window But it would be worth double checking the community page to.
Okay, so just recap. Maybe I can just raise a PR and listing the names that are not active for over 90 days. We will comment them out. That is appropriate, right? Okay.
Sorry, I shouldn't be nodding. I have to break the habit. I defer to the chairs.
That's still a chair in my mind.
Yeah, I believe your input is still valid, Zach.
Yeah.
You have permission to nod. Yeah, I believe that's completely fair, reasonable to raise the PR up. I know for some other teams that I've been involved with is that they have opened up PRs, removing people actively and tagging them in the PR. Even in my experience, some of those was less of a question, but at least raising the awareness of, and at least the example of the release manager team actively removing and adding folks and tagging who you're adding and removing in the description of the PR is a way to notify them of the action being taken. Personally speaking, from even the Kubernetes website, the English approvers, I've noticed the same thing in what I've done in the past, and it depends on what the situation is, but I've usually DM'd folks on Slack and asked, hey, are you comfortable with me removing your permissions here? And if I don't hear a response, I will take that as, general level of comfort of me removing your inability to act as an approver. And I think a lot of times people have the mentality that the removal is like a negative or a punishing action. And so I just try to make an effort myself personally when I'm opening these PRs to be very clear that this isn't punitive. This is not a punishment. Like if somebody wants to be active again, there's history in GitHub. And the expectation is, like you were mentioning, if they have cycles, they're more than welcome to come back and join at that level of a contributor. So I don't know. I think there's a few things I'm saying there is just generally reaching out, and then in the PR also expressing that it's not like a negative action. It's, hey, look, we need reviewers to be active, and if they have more cycles, they can definitely come back. Cool. Any other questions or comments around that topic? Does anybody want to take the action item to raise it up at the SIG Contribx monthly update or the community meeting monthly?
When is the next meeting?
I want to say it's the third Thursday of every month, so we might have just missed it last week, but I could be mistaken on that.
Yeah, we just missed it. It was last week.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm happy to give the update. If y'all trust me.
Awesome. Sounds good to me. I put the action item in the agenda there, and we'll just try to track that as we go along and make sure that we're there. Cool. So we're actually pretty much up on the hour. We have about 5 more minutes. Does anybody have any other topics to add to the agenda that they'd like to discuss? Hearing nothing, that is a SIG meeting. Appreciate it. I'll talk to y'all later.